Imagine the world's economies as celestial bodies, each with its own gravitational pull, orbiting the sun of global finance. Some, like massive stars, exert a powerful influence, while others, like smaller planets, are more susceptible to external forces. In this intricate cosmic dance, the International Monetary Fund, or IMF, acts as a celestial mechanic, striving to maintain order and stability within this complex system. The IMF, established in the aftermath of World War II, aims to foster global monetary cooperation and financial stability. Just as gravity governs the interactions of celestial bodies, the IMF's policies and lending practices shape the economic trajectories of its member countries, particularly those in the developing world. This video delves into the often debated impact of IMF policies on African nations. We'll explore the economic, social, and political consequences, examining both the potential benefits and the unintended consequences. Like astronomers peering through telescopes, we'll seek to understand the complex interplay of forces at work. By understanding the IMF's role and its effects, we gain a deeper appreciation for the interconnectedness of our world. Just as celestial events can have ripple effects across the cosmos, decisions made in the realm of global finance can reverberate through societies, impacting the lives of millions. The IMF, often described as a lender of last resort, provides financial assistance to countries facing balance of payments difficulties. Think of it as a cosmic tow truck, offering a lifeline to nations at risk of financial collapse. However, this assistance comes with conditions, often referred to as conditionalities. These conditionalities, much like the laws of physics, are designed to address the underlying economic imbalances that led to the crisis. They typically involve a combination of fiscal austerity measures, such as reducing government spending, and structural reforms aimed at liberalizing the economy, like privatization and trade liberalization. The IMF argues that these reforms are essential for creating a stable macroeconomic environment conducive to sustainable growth. By promoting fiscal discipline, they aim to reduce debt burdens and restore investor confidence. By encouraging market-oriented reforms, they seek to unlock a country's economic potential and foster private sector-led growth. However, critics argue that these policies, often implemented with a one-size-fits-all approach, can be too harsh, particularly for developing countries still grappling with poverty and inequality. They contend that austerity measures can stifle economic growth and exacerbate social inequalities, while rapid liberalization can lead to job losses and social unrest. Structural Adjustment Programs, or SAPs, are a key instrument through which the IMF implements its policies. These comprehensive packages of reforms aim to address deep-seated structural imbalances within an economy. They are akin to celestial realignments, intended to shift a country's economic trajectory towards a path of sustainable growth. SAPs typically encompass a wide range of measures, including fiscal austerity, which involves reducing government spending, often through cuts to public services like healthcare and education, and increasing taxes. Monetary policy reforms, such as raising interest rates to control inflation and attract foreign investment. Trade liberalization, which means removing barriers to trade, such as tariffs and quotas, to promote exports and attract foreign investment. And privatization, selling state-owned enterprises to private investors to improve efficiency and reduce government involvement in the economy. Proponents of SAPs argue that these reforms are essential for creating a more competitive and efficient economy, attracting foreign investment, and promoting long-term growth. They contend that while there may be short-term costs associated with these adjustments, the long-term benefits outweigh the initial pain. Critics, however, argue that SAPs often lead to a race to the bottom, where countries are forced to adopt policies that undermine labor rights and environmental protections in a bid to attract foreign investment. They also point to the social costs associated with these programs, such as increased poverty, unemployment, and inequality. Section 4. Economic Impacts, a mixed tapestry of success and struggle. The economic impact of IMF policies on African nations has been a subject of much debate. While there have been instances of success where IMF-supported programs have contributed to economic stabilization and growth, there have also been cases where these policies have exacerbated existing problems or created new ones. On the positive side, IMF programs have, in some instances, helped to stabilize economies in crisis, restore macroeconomic balance, and pave the way for renewed growth. For example, in countries like Ghana and Uganda, IMF-supported programs have been credited with helping to reduce inflation, stabilize currencies, and restore fiscal sustainability. However, critics argue that these successes are often overshadowed by the negative consequences of IMF policies. They point to the fact that many African countries remain trapped in a cycle of debt and dependence, despite decades of IMF intervention. They argue that the emphasis on austerity and market liberalization has often led to job losses, reduced access to essential services, and increased inequality. Furthermore, critics contend that the IMF's focus on macroeconomic stability often comes at the expense of long-term development goals. They argue that the emphasis on reducing government spending can undermine investments in crucial sectors like healthcare, education, and infrastructure, hindering long-term economic transformation. Section 5. Social consequences, ripples through the fabric of society. The social consequences of IMF policies can be far-reaching, impacting everything from healthcare and education to employment and social cohesion. While proponents argue that economic growth spurred by IMF reforms ultimately benefits society as a whole, critics point to the often uneven distribution of these benefits and the disproportionate burden borne by the most vulnerable segments of society. One of the most contentious aspects of IMF conditionalities is the requirement for cuts to public spending. While these cuts are often presented as a necessary evil to restore fiscal balance, they can have a devastating impact on essential services like healthcare and education. Reduced funding for healthcare can lead to shortages of essential medicines, longer waiting times, and a decline in the overall quality of care. Similarly, cuts to education can limit access to quality education, particularly for the poor and marginalized. This can have long-term consequences, perpetuating cycles of poverty and inequality. Furthermore, the emphasis on privatization within SAPs has often led to increased costs for essential services like water and electricity, further burdening the poor. The social unrest sparked by these policies is a stark reminder that economic decisions are not made in a vacuum. They have real-world consequences, and ignoring the social dimension of these policies can have destabilizing effects. Section 6. Political implications, sovereignty under a cosmic microscope. The political ramifications of IMF involvement in African countries are complex and multifaceted. While the IMF maintains that it is a purely technical institution, its lending practices and policy prescriptions inevitably have political consequences, raising questions about sovereignty and democratic accountability. One of the main criticisms leveled at the IMF is that its conditionalities undermine national sovereignty. Critics argue that by dictating policy choices, the IMF effectively usurps the role of democratically elected governments, eroding national autonomy and imposing external solutions to internal problems. Furthermore, the IMF's decision-making processes have been criticized for lacking transparency and accountability. Critics argue that the institution is dominated by Western powers, particularly the United States, which holds the largest voting share. This imbalance of power, they contend, skews the IMF's priorities towards the interests of developed countries at the expense of developing nations. The political fallout from IMF-imposed austerity measures can be significant. Public anger over cuts to essential services, job losses, and rising living costs has in some cases sparked protests, riots, and political instability. This underscores the importance of considering the political economy of IMF interventions and ensuring that policy prescriptions are sensitive to local contexts and aligned with national priorities.